Welcome back. Well, we're tracking our news for you that the government has lifted their embargo on granting business to private banks in order to bring in more efficiency and level the playing field. So will these banks stand to benefit, particularly smaller banks? Tamal Bandyopadhyay joining us on the show this morning. Great to have you with us, Tamal. Now, the larger banks were already doing some government business, although with restrictions. Will this create a level playing field now for all banks, and do some of the smaller ones stand to benefit?
Yeah, I think absolutely. We would need to see how the benefit, pans out. But I think it's a very strong statement. I think I would interpret it as a signal in sync with the newfound government, or the, if I may say so, the mission of, the belief in privatization. I've heard Prime Minister Narendra Modi speaking at some place that government does not have any business to be in business. The government's business is the welfare of people and the country, and let the private sector run the businesses. I think it's in sync with this, the broader theme of privatization, the focus on privatization. It is in sync with that. Now, what does it mean? Earlier, many years back, private banks were not allowed to do government businesses. And then selectively it started. Some of the large banks were allowed. And now it says all private banks will be allowed. Now, what does that entail? One is, of course, it will from the bank side, it will increase the fee income, like, distribution of, even though it's a very, very measly fees when you give pension, or say PPF account, various kind of savings accounts and all on behalf of collection of tax, etc. So it adds to the fee income of the private sector. Private banks, that's from the bank's point of view. From the customer's point of view, if I'm banking with a relatively smaller bank in some areas, but I can't pay the tax with I can pay the tax using my bank as a platform. Now I don't have to go to a second bank for tax paying, etc. I can do the same business with my bank. So that's win for both the sides. And more importantly also, it will help particularly the smaller banks, since you have asked them, to generate liquidity, because of the government rules in many government institutions. When they are flush with cash, they do not keep money with private entities because they are not allowed by the government. So a private entity flush with funds, they typically auction it, sealed envelope, they auction it. They said, where to keep my money? I am talking about in terms of FDs. And among the government banks, they pick up the highest bidder. But you have seen, if you look at what are the FD rates, most of the private banks, not the main street large banks, but the relatively smaller ones, including the small finance banks, they are offering higher interest rates than the public sector banks. Now, these government entities, which are most often flush with cash, they, even if they wish to, they can't keep their money with these banks, which are as safe as any other bank. But now with this lift on the ban of doing government businesses with these entities, I presume, along with the other transaction business, keeping money, extra liquidity also will be allowed. So that's good for banks. So banks will get extra fee income, additional fee income, even though the fee is not great for many of the transactions. Banks will get extra liquidity, which is, I would think, more important than fee income for the smaller banks. And as far as the customers are concerned, it is convenience for them. They don't need to do a mainline banking with a particular bank for their credit, etc., and do the other transactions, government-related transactions, paying banks to other banks. Yeah. Yep.
Right. So Tamal, I also wanted to ask you, government has stated now for the privatization of 2 PSU banks. Do you think that this will pave the way for further privatization of banks? How significant is this in terms of their intent, in terms of actually seeing this happen now on ground and this becoming more of the norm?
No, these are two unrelated things. I don't think this will encourage privatization or this will pave the way for privatization. This is unrelated, but this is a signal by the government, which is in sync with the broader theme of privatization, not only of banking, for everything else also. Privatization of bank is an issue. It's a very strong statement made by the finance minister in her budget speech. And if you see, it didn't talk about divestment, it talked about privatization. So I'm sure it will not be the IDBI kind of privatization, which was not exactly privatization asking LIC to pick up the majority stake in IDBI. That was not privatization. That's a mockery of privatization. But I think this time the government is serious. Again, it's a signal. And all kind of speculations are on which are the two banks which will be. And we have read the interview of Minister of State for Finance. This gentleman, Honorable Minister, added something saying in that, look, why would any buyer buy the weaker banks? So he meant that probably the relatively better of banks could be up for sale. He has not committed, but this also added to speculation and all over the place. Which are the two banks? I mean, if you want to discuss, we can go forward. That's a separate story. But privatization is going to happen. To start with, two banks.
All right, fantastic. Tamal, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Great speaking with you and getting some perspective on these key developments when it comes to the banking space and the ongoing privatization drive that we're seeing with this government.